I'm Mubarak. Paneling with me are Valerie, Logan, Paolo, Leomar, Brett, Bobby, Mustafa, and Behram. The motion before the House is this House regrets the emphasis on miracles in the spread of religion. Okay, continue. On side government, we have the team from Singapore, Chong Institution. Representing them are Timothy, Brian, and Gabriel. On side opposition, we have the team from Malaysia, SMK, Damansara. They are represented by Eliza, Evan, and Deborah. Without further ado, to start the debate, may we invite Tim to speak in the motion that stands in his name.
Yes, can everyone hear me? Ladies and gentlemen, we on proposition today are not going to argue to you about the merits of the beliefs of religions. We're not going to tell you that certain religious beliefs are good or bad, or that we should spread them more or spread them less. What we are going to tell you today is that the way in which the current religions spread or seek to spread their religion and practice like preach it and spread their religion is ultimately harmful when they focus too much on this on the miracles, on the miraculous aspects of their beliefs. This undermines the ability of new believers in trying to understand their beliefs, as well as undermines their true acceptance of the life that they choose to live when they decide, I want to become a believer, I want to sign up to this church or to this mosque or whatever, right? What kind of religions are we talking about in today's debate? Very specifically, we often are talking about things such as like Christianity or Islam, and within this, we are often especially talking about like say evangelical groups or Pentecostal groups, right? These groups believe talk especially about like the miracles, and they focus on the miraculous aspects of their religion. And therefore they don't tell you so much about like what you actually need to believe to come to this religion. They tell you like, look, this is a miracle that happened. This is a work of God. This is an act of God. That is why our God exists. Sir. That is why you should become a believer. That is why you should believe in our God, right? Before I move on to explain the harms of this, yes, sir.
So we don't think that Pentecostal groups have no incentive to explain what the religion is about, when the main purpose of performing these miracles in the first place is to explain what religion is about.
Yes, sir. We say that it is. So we say that it is obviously in their interest to get people to understand their religious beliefs, right? But at the point where their pastors are telling them, why do you like get only like 5 people to join our church, or even none at all? And this is such a huge standard, which is reinforced every week Sunday at like an evangelical church. This is the message that's ultimately propagated to these believers, right? At the end of the day, even if they are not telling you that this is all our religion is about, this is the focus of their preaching, this is the focus of their evangelism, and this is why it is so harmful. I'm going to be telling you 3 things for today. First of all, I'm going to tell you how it distorts the understanding of religion. Second of all, I'm going to be discussing the responses of these non-believers to the kinds of preaching that is being put forward. And finally, I'm going to talk to you about harms that this accrues. So first of all, we think that ultimately, right, this distorts an understanding really of what this religion really is about. When you tell people that, you know, there's this miracle, that like maybe there was the flood and therefore my God exists, right? It seems to imply that this is all that your God really is about. Your God is there, your God is powerful because he creates works, not simply because he's like there in and of itself, because of certain beliefs that your religion is trying to propagate, right? They overlook the aspect which ultimately tells you that you need to commit to a life of belief. You need to do things such, for instance, as like take up your cross, like bear suffering, right? Ultimately for your religion. You need to commit every week, every day to going to church, like doing quiet time or whatever. These are the kinds of real lives that you're opting into when you choose to accept a particular religion. religion. You distort the understanding when you think that I'm just going to religion because then God will work miracles for me somehow, because then I'll be chosen in that particular respect, right? And that's why you think it's so harmful in distorting the understanding of religion. What has ultimately been the responses of non-believers towards such rhetoric and preaching methods which have been employed? First of all, we see on one hand, there are some people who are like very skeptical, right? They're like, oh, where's the scientific proof? So for instance, like my teammate Mingwei there, he's like nodding furiously because every time it's about where is there the proof? Does this really happen? If not, like I'm not interested in your religion at all, right? The moment you start talking about miracles, this is harmful because they don't even get a chance to explain what their religion is about. There's no choice involved there. But more importantly, we're also talking about like the competition that exists, right? I mean, if one god like sends a flood and destroys the entire earth, and another god like sends, I don't know, fire that destroys the entire galaxy, surely this god that destroys the galaxy is more powerful and like somehow is better than the other god, right? And this is the kind of harmful competition that we think exists. This distorts the way in which they are really spreading their message. But at the end of the day, let us examine the aspect when these people really actually enter the religion because of the shock and awe aspect of it, right? This is where we think that there are various different harms. First of all, no thank you. We think that they are joining mostly because of like the immediate shock and awe effect that's got to do with it, right? So for instance, if you tell them about a particular person that was just healed miraculously, they'll think that, wow, this is really good, and I'm going to like join your church, right? Because that's ultimately a kind of pressure and a message that's being put forward there, instead of giving people the time to really consider, to find out more about their beliefs, and to actually consider whether or not this is the kind of religion, these are the beliefs that are congruent with my value systems that I really believe in, that I want to commit my entire life to, right? And at the end of the day, when they join the church, it is also about where are these miracles that like I was promised, right? I joined the church implicitly, if not explicitly, on the idea that God performs miracles, and therefore when I join this church, like he'll perform miracles for me. But more often than not, this is not what happens at the end of the day. Many of these preachers and pastors tell them, you know what, you just need to keep praying, you just need to keep believing, you need to trust in God. Maybe he knows better than you, and that's the kind of message that happens at the end of the day. A few harms that we think accrue from all of this. On the first level, it's very hard for these people to actually recruit properly, which I've explained already earlier. But more importantly, we also think that the kinds of people that you recruit don't actually really understand or commit or believe to whatever you're talking about, right? And that is when they hold a moment, sir, when they ultimately like take the believer's pledge or the creed or whatever, that they don't actually understand what they're in for. Do you not agree, sir?
Given that individuals interpret their religion differently, and the church exposes these individuals to different tenets of the religion, why can't individuals then interpret their own belief based on the miracles or based on other tenets of religion?
So in a situation where a religion is entirely about miracles, like clearly that's not where the debate happens. The debate happens in the real world, where there are many aspects of religious beliefs which pastors might explain to people in sermons, but which aren't explained to people whom like these believers are trying to recruit, right, immediately, because you want to have as many people to join your religion or join your church as fast as possible. And that's why we think it's impossible for you to explain like the entire Bible to them. Who is going to listen to you? And when you're talking about like Bible or theological teachings, who is going to listen to you? Instead, they're only going to listen to you when you bring out like miracles and say like this happened, right, in order to like capture people's attention. But this is ultimately harmful because there's been an over-reliance on this entire aspect of preaching, right? And it is especially harmful when like it might be harder for people to come to terms with the kind of religion they have ultimately opted into. They are wondering, why isn't there all these miracles that are promised for me? They might be clutching at straws and trying to interpret many different signs as ultimately signs from God. And all this is especially important because sometimes for many religions it might be especially hard for them to pull out. We think that in the first place it is hard for them to make an informed choice. It is hard for them to ultimately come to terms and make a proper and rational choice at the end of the day. For all these reasons, we are very proud to propose.
This house thanks Tim. Would now like to introduce Eliza to the floor.
Testing. I'm not sure if this group from Singapore are atheists because they obviously don't understand how churches work. We don't think that the main purpose of a church is to just bring in people immediately and as fast as possible. That is never what a church does. We think that the church caters to many things. Number one, it caters to people on the ground. That means it helps people and they try their best to gather more followers in order to help those people. Number two, it also supports the idea of social good. That means they teach people to do the best kinds of social goals out there. We think also that their main purpose is to keep people within those religious circuits and continuously teach them the values that they want to propagate. We never want, the churches never want to bring people in on an immediate basis, because it's even worse then if people come in for a while and realize that there's nothing I want to agree with here, I'm going to leave even more. We think it's even worse on their side when people come in on the basis of just the emphasis and leave after that. We think there's a major incentive for these religious bodies to explain to them the religious values that are co-linked with these kinds of emphasis. This means that certain miracles that exist are because this God is particularly divine in this situation. That's why you need to cater your entire lives to that. We don't think it's something that's harmful, and especially because it's a way in which the religion best caters to these people. That's why we are willing to support it. Before moving on to my speech today, a few ideas of rebuttal. Firstly, on the idea of distorting the understanding, because this is how it implies that God is all about the good things that happen and they not necessarily can fulfill it. Number one, we understand that sometimes miracles are ambiguous in nature and you don't know when it can happen. But this doesn't mean that you will never propagate this idea, especially when the religion themselves believes that it's something that can happen and will happen ultimately if you continuously hope for it. We think it's a particularly legitimate way in which to bring more followers in. We think it's perfectly fine if it's something that will happen in the future, but moreover, if people can continuously hope for it, we think it's fine as well. But secondly, even if these things never happen on your side, we think number one, that a lot of religions believe and teach you that this is something that is God's will. You're going to have to accept it at some point. But secondly, also, we think that these people will also then get all the benefits from religion in itself. A lot of benefits that are mutually exclusive when to our side, when you are the people that don't want these people to enter these religions on the basis of emphasis, right? But moreover, we think that different people also relate to different religions differently. This means that when they enter into these things, even if they enter on the basis of awestruckness and all these kinds of things, because this particular God has these ultimate values and can actually do these miracles, and if the people believe so, then we think we're fine with that. But moreover, when they enter into these situations and when they enter into all these things, we think that obviously the church has a great incentive to teach them these ultimate values, because the church always has the role in teaching these people and educating them on the proper path. We think that they will teach these values also because they want to keep the church as big as it is already, and they always want to have more and more people and more people continuously quitting the church. So we don't think that the church will ultimately just leave them there and tell them, you believe in this thing, and okay, just stay there and listen to my sermon. We don't think that's going to happen, right? But on the idea of competition and which miracle is more important, like hello, obviously different miracles apply differently to people. That means if I am someone that is sick and I believe in divine healing, obviously if I believe that this God can cater to my divine healing, then how is that harmful? We think it's always about the relatability of that particular religion to that person. We think it's fine in that way. But moreover, if a religion wants to be able to convince certain people in different ways, we are fine with that. We don't think there's a particular harm towards that. But no, the second idea, on the idea of joining cause immediately, and how it's an implicit cause for this. We think that even if they want to opt in implicitly, we already tell you how it's going to be a long-term benefit towards so. But even if they even if they don't recognize this problem, we think there will still always be benefits. And even if they don't understand at the first point, the religion is all about teaching you on the continuity of that particular religion, we don't think it's ultimately harmful. But the last idea, who's going to listen to you if you only preach about the Holy Bible and all those kinds of things? Then we believe that if that is the problem with that particular religion, what is the harm of them actually using this emphasis on all these kinds of things? Because we tell you that if people want to opt into it on the basis of that religion, we think it's fine. If they want to have that safety net and believe that ultimately that's the reason why I need a God and a supreme being watching over me, we don't think it's harm in that particular choice. Moving on to my two arguments for you today, but sure.
The very problem is when it is legitimate for people to say, I want to join a religion because it will call me out my illness, but then at the end of the day it doesn't materialize, which is why
I told you already, we hope that they hold on to when they are particularly when they are at the point of when they're dying on situations. We think that hope is particularly important when they subscribe themselves to a certain religion that will tell them, that will heal them. But even if it doesn't heal them, we told you that the benefits that ensue will only come on our side when you diminish the ability for the religion to cater towards these people. Let's understand what these miracles are, because we think these miracles are divine proof of a supreme being existing, and it's a legitimate way, because he never characterized to us what it is, right? Because we believe that what is the emphasis on this divine healing? These are things like surprising results in surprising accidents, or things like divine healing, or people that are missing that come reappearing. We think that these divine situations that occur regularly, or in situations not so regularly, occur to different kinds of people. And also these kinds of things are things that many scientists, many journalists, many doctors themselves cannot disprove. This means that these are the things that are not necessarily something that is ultimately not being able to happen, but it's something that's subjective and able to for everyone to ultimately rationalize and choose what you like to believe in. We think that especially because it's not something that has ultimately been ruled out as harmful, we think that every church or religious body has the ability to use this to their benefit to cater towards people. Because what is the role of the religion? We don't think they answer this question, right? Because number one is to cater to people. Number two, to be able to help people to cling on to hope. And number three, to be able to teach them about doing social good and being a better person in the world. We think that if they are able to use this as the best purpose of religion to incentivize more people to join these kinds of things, we think it's particularly fine. Because number one, it fulfills the role that they have. But number two, it's also be able to attract more followers. But how is it even better for people on this side? And what's the result of this emphasizing, right? We think it's necessary for people to be able to opt into this idea that this God is particularly amazing. When you remove the ability for them to emphasize on this thing, you remove and devalue the entire religion to begin with. You devalue the entire reason for that God to exist, because God in itself, for many people, they have to believe that this God is supernatural, and we think that these kinds of supernatural emphasis is something that's important for people to cling on to in their respect to what they think God is. We think that this perception of what God is particularly important to every kind of people out there and to those religious bodies themselves. This means that if people want to opt into this idea that they have a supreme God that can change their particular situation when they are sick, when they are dying, and when they have people in harmful situations, we think it's important for these people to opt into this emphasis and understand that there is someone out there that can help them. Ultimately, they have not proved anything. We proved many things.
This house, thanks Eliza, I would now like to introduce Brian to the floor.
This debate is for maintaining a balance between recruiting more individuals and individuals who will stay. The problem with side opposition was that their initial attack to our policy was not one that directly clashes with the idea that we don't want to emphasize on religion, but one that challenges whether this emphasis on religion will happen in the first place. Clearly, this debate must assume that the emphasis on religion does happen, and taking that as the fiat, how are we going to look at this debate? I'm going to look at it in two key areas. First, I'm going to talk about the entire rhetoric about how people are going to accept it in the long run, and this is going to be beneficial in terms of recruiting more people. And second, I'm going to talk about their whole idea of the relatability of miracles. So the first idea that they told us, right? They told us that people are going to accept it in the long run. In fact, their rhetoric was, when you find out that this miracle won't happen to you, you're going to have to just accept it in future. We argue that that shouldn't be the case. Our argument right from the first speaker, which they failed to deal with, was that it is important for people to understand the choices that they're making, especially when religion pertains to your lifestyle, pertains to something that's so fundamental to what you believe. It is not just about people forcing you and realizing in the long run that just suck it up, it's not going to happen to you. It is about realizing that this is what I want, this is the fundamental thing I want to subscribe to as a way of life, not just because I realize it doesn't happen and I'm just going to suck it up. In fact, it is this type of rhetoric that Timothy told you is particularly harmful, because in instances where there is little recourse when you join to a religion, or little opt-out clauses from joining to a religion, it is exactly that rhetoric that emphasizes this. When you say, wait, you joined a religion because of miracles, it didn't happen, don't go out, just suck it up, because that isn't going to happen, just accept it. It is that kind of rhetoric that keeps people perniciously within religions that they don't want to subscribe to, that we only entered because of shock and awe. Then they told us, people will teach these values anyway. We already told you that there is a fiat, and we must assume that religion is that miracles are the emphasis of this. But let us now deal with the best case scenario that exists on their side. What is the best case scenario? The best case scenario that exists in there, hold on a minute, sir, is that we have, people come to churches and are willing to come to churches because we shock and awe them, and then we get to teach them these values. I'll show you why this is still fundamentally harmful, but before that, go ahead.
You can say by fiat that emphasis of religion exists, emphasis of miracles exists, but you cannot say by fiat that there's no other core tenet that's being taught within those religions that we expose the believers to under circumstances as well.
Yes, if you just heard my label, I was exactly going to rebut that right now. So moving on to it. So first, we argue that you initially already turn away new recruits into the religion. Why so? Because the basis by which they joined the religion in the first place was because of a material presence of a higher being. It was because of these miracles that they saw happen. When God healed an individual, when God gave food to individuals, that is the basis by which they joined the religion. But when they enter into church and realize, hey, wait a minute, that isn't really the case. This is about faith, this is about belief, this is about a way of life. It is not about the miracles. If they want a better, if they want both worlds, we argue they ultimately harm them in the long run, because these recruits are just going to say, this is not what I signed up for, they are going to leave anyways. And that is why even in their best case scenario, it doesn't happen. But what did Timothy tell you that they failed to deal with? They failed to deal with the idea that there will be skeptics even before they can enter church. Which is that very simply, if I hear about a religion, so if I hear about in Greece, God healed someone who had sickness, I'm not going to suddenly say, oh wow, God exists and therefore I will join Christianity. That just isn't going to happen. Intuitively, what will happen is that I'll be like, wait a minute, is this actually true? Is this scientifically possible? As they already admitted, it is fundamentally impossible for these things to happen under our present scientific context, which turns many people away and make them skeptical of this religion in the first place. So even if they want to say we will teach them in church, many of these people don't go to church in the first place. Why is our side better on this ground? Sure, we argue that some people won't want to subscribe to this way of life, and that will happen on both instances. But at the very least, we think what is fundamentally important is to give individuals who choose to subscribe to this religion an informed choice to allow them to make the decision as to whether they want to subscribe and want that to be their fundamental belief that you have to keep on for the rest of their lives. We argue this is a big decision. It's not something as simple as, I just suddenly subscribe to it because of shock and awe. We think it's a decision that is undermined on their side, fundamentally, when they all characterize it as a single instance, a single moment. We think it's far more than that. But more than that, we argue that it is not just about teaching these values in church or about just having these new people come to church in the first place. It is about the fundamental understanding of what this religion is. And here's where Timothy's analysis and their failure to deal with it is fundamentally problematic. They told us, sure, we can allow people to continually believe it is about supernatural things. But we have to say, and we have to admit, that the physical presence of a higher being is often very rare. That's why we don't have miracles happening day in and day out. It just doesn't happen. Insofar as that is the case, and insofar as their rhetoric is that this supernatural or physical presence of God is what keeps people within the religion, we argue and say that in the long term, or even within a short span of time, people are going to be turned away if this physical presence doesn't manifest itself, if this doesn't happen. We argue that's fundamentally the case, and they will turn people away rather than have people join this religion in the long run. I'm not going to then look at the second idea that they talked to us about the reliability of miracles. Right? And here's where they told us, or relatability rather, of miracles. And here's where they told us that each individual religion will have its own miracle, like specialization or whatnot, and people will buy into the religion that has the miracle that has that miracle that best caters to them. My first speaker already told you why this is fundamentally harmful, insofar as we don't want people to buy into the religion just because the religion offers them that help. Especially when their speaker wants to tell us that religion is about forwarding a social good. It's not about your own benefit. That's why we think that joining a religion because we think God can give you food or God can heal you is fundamentally not in line with the idea of a social good, the idea of propagating the beliefs of their religion. We argue it's contradictory on their side to want to propose both solutions. But we argue that the competition idea that came out of Timothy, and I'm going to extend on this, is worse when they tell us that people subscribe to religions on the basis of what miracles they have to offer. Timothy told you about how people just get bigger and more types of miracles that happen. I'm going to argue that this causes religion to over-exaggerate the capabilities of what they can actually achieve. What happens, right? Because now these religions know that it is the specific type of miracle that will get me these new recruits. That some people want healing powers, some people want God to give them food. And these are different kinds of miracles that currently exist, as they say, different religions have these different kinds of miracles or different kinds of miracles to offer. What we argue is that at the point in which this is the basis for new recruits, at the point in which the emphasis on miracles is so great, people are just going to say, actually my God can do all of this, actually my God can achieve everything that you want in the other religion, so come to me instead. Ultimately, we think this breeds two harms. First, it breeds the harms of conflict within religion, when religions try to over-compete with each other and try to steal recruits from other individuals because they think that these miracles are bound to happen. But second, also because that many people see that these miracles don't happen, that the God doesn't have anything to offer them. In the long run, it is outside that recruits more individuals and have individual recruits stay longer within these religions. They were very proud to stand in proposition.
This house, thanks Brian. We'll now like to introduce Evan to the floor.
An emphasis on miracles does not mean a dismissal of all other tenets of religion, and they already agreed and conceded to that. So we also agreed, right? The church is not only about gaining more believers, but also making sure the believers stay. So how do we tackle certain points coming up from their side of house? We tackle it in a few ways, right? Firstly, they told you this idea of, well, it's important to make people understand the choices they're making, because it's a big choice, and by emphasizing just the main part of miracles, then you don't allow them the exposure to all other tenets of the religion themselves. Look, let's characterize the moment when individuals face the proselytization. What really happens, right? When the moment individuals face proselytization, they enter religion based on consent and informed choice. Why is this so, right? You think these people are also sufficiently exposed to the idea that miracles would potentially fail as well. An emphasis on miracles by the religious groups does not mean these people are not exposed to the media and things like that, where certain miracles that religion propagated them did fail. So we think that they enter based on consent and informed choice as well. But furthermore, we argue even further than that, right? They only enter when they believe the miracle is relatable to them. So we displace this idea that in the future, these individuals may care about that. Sure, they're not exposed to the idea of faith and all those things, but when they enter based on relatability. And this is something they never go at the end of the day, right? Because at the end of the day, my religion and what I believe in at the end of the day is based on how I understand my religion. If I understand my religion based on miracles and based on what happens, miracles to other people, or miracles that could potentially happen to myself, it's a consensual choice that I make. It's an informed choice that I make, that I enter religion based on this thing potentially happening to me. And we don't think that's a form of coercion. We think that people do understand the choices they're making because they are related and they relate to the idea that miracles could potentially happen to them in a very unique way. Then secondly, the second speaker told you, right, the relatability of miracles and how it's harmful, because the religion should not only be about your own benefit, it should be about altruism and things like that. Look, people join churches and remain there because also they want to achieve certain form of personal benefit and personal gains as well. You cannot dismiss this idea, right? People remain in religion because they understand I'll have eternal life, not other people under those circumstances. I'll get benefit in the real world, right? But furthermore than that, just because we emphasize on miracles doesn't mean miracles don't only occur to you. Emphasis on miracles also means that you believe that other people could experience miracles as well. That's why people form prayer groups and pray for miracles to happen to other people. Those are forms of social goods and altruism that your religion also and our religion can also provide under this circumstance. Then he told this weird idea from the second speaker. People overcompete. Over-competition happens under status quo as well. We don't see why this is uniquely, mutually exclusive towards outside, right? We feel the religious organization always want more believers under all circumstances, right? They can use all the various types of methods unless there's third-party harm to expose people to their religion and convince people to join their religion, right? So we tell you that exposing people to emphasis on miracles is a legit tactic for churches or religious organizations to expose people and gain more believers, right? We don't see why over-competition is a bad thing under your side, right? Or under our side as well. So let's tackle a few things that came up from Prime Minister as well. He told you about the response of non-believers and told you, oh, these things are not science-based, these are things out of our logic. It's exactly that, right? We think atheists and non-believers are inquisitive individuals. These are people who try to fill the logic gap, things that things that the real world cannot, the answers in the real world that currently exist cannot provide. That's when religion comes in to steps in and fills that gap for them. This is when they understand that religion is something special, right? Religion is something that fulfills the answers which the world cannot explain in status quo today, and it's something sufficiently and uniquely important and relatable to every individual, not only myself as a non-believer, but to other people who are believers as well. No, I'll take one after my rebuttals. Then he told about new believers, and they join churches based on the idea that God performs miracles, and once they realize that the church does not base their teachings upon the idea that churches, that miracles do happen, then they leave and things like that, right? We allow churches to employ various tactics to attract miracles to come, to attract believers to come in, right? We have soup kitchens, right? Where poor people come in and eat, but at the other end of the room, people are singing kumbaya and praying to their God and things like that, right? And having teachings, personal teachings of their religion and things like that, right? These are choices that churches, these are tactics that churches do make in order to gain more believers and attract more believers into their churches. But they are not against that. Why is this so? Because we think that under both sides, the principle is this, right? In order to gain more believers, we can do whatever we want, but the idea is sustainability, right? And the idea of sustainability is when we can, therefore, once we attract their attention, we expose them to the real teaching, right? As long as there's sufficient curiosity to make them sustainable at the end of the day, then we think that we can build upon that curiosity and fill in the logic gaps that religion provides, right? Fill in the answers that the real world cannot provide, and allow these people to experience God in a way that's personal to them and intrinsic and intimate and relatable to them. I'll take one, yeah.
So people want answers and promises of the supernatural. And when you go, you tell them that the real answer is that your faith is not strong enough. Maybe God knows better. That like all the things that we told you might not materialize because actually, you know what, you just need to believe a while or you need to wait a while.
Yeah, so that side assumes that the miracle will never happen, right? We say that miracles can potentially happen as well, and the faith can still exist on the outside. But even if the miracle does not happen, right, we think that individuals base their faith on relatability, right? If these individuals enter the religion because they are relatable to miracles, not only miracles happen towards themselves, but miracles that happen towards other people as well, and the form of proselytization that occurs towards other people, and the way miracles expand themselves and translate themselves towards interpreting the religion towards other individuals, then we think that they'll remain in the religion even if the miracle does not occur to them, because they see miracles still happening to other individuals, even if they don't happen to us themselves. They still see that miracles is something true. What religion taught me when they exposed me to miracles is still something true, because it still happens to other people, even though it doesn't happen to me. That's something that they need to understand from their side of the house. So what's my argument for today? It's the subjective relatability of religion and why churches or religious organizations should be allowed to employ this method, right? To gain more believers and make them sustain, right? So we have to argue this, right? Different people opt into religion and stay in religion based on the relatability of their teachings. That's why religion is a personal relationship with God. So the way you relate to your God may be different from the way I relate to my God. So religion intends to maximize its relatability to individuals to allow them to effectively translate the Holy Scripture to a message that's understandable and relatable towards the congregation. How is this related to today's debate, right? We think that emphasis on miracles allows maximization of relatability and maximization of sustainability of individuals within the church themselves. How is this so, right? We think firstly, miracles provide answer to the unanswerable questions that exist within status quo today, right? Because humans are naturally inquisitive and curious individuals, often there's a vast amount of ambiguity that exists within this world that logic cannot fulfill, that logic cannot answer. So in a quest to fulfill the logical gap, individuals opt into religion and opt into the idea that miracles exist to fulfill that logical gap, so that religion provides answers towards that logical gap, right? These are things that exist, and these are reasons why people stay in religion, right? Because they are still curious about how certain things occur and why they occur, right? And they believe that religion provides the answers towards that. But furthermore, things which come up from my Prime Minister's speech, which was unrebutted, right? It provides a safety net, right? When individuals believe that health is the most important thing at the end of the day, and I believe that miracles allows me to preserve my health, even though it may not potentially happen to me, but I believe that in the potential that miracles may happen to me one day when I'm in a dire circumstance and I need it. This is when individuals opt in to have a safety net to preserve their life at the end of the day. We take this debate.
This house, thanks, Evan. I would now like to introduce Gabriel to the floor.
I'm going to go through each argument in this debate systematically. Let's ask two questions. First, let's ask, does this allow religious communities to retain membership? And talking about the more open-minded people. Second, let's ask if this helps them better recruit membership. Talking about the more skeptical people like debaters ourselves. First question, does this help them retain membership, right? And there was no analysis whatsoever on their side of the house about how people join religion, right? Their characterization was that there was no incentive on the part of religions to recruit people immediately because they want to retain these people. That's true. We agree. And it is always in the interest of religious communities to want to retain membership. But here's the problem.
the sort of rhetoric they bank on to capture the attention of the public is ultimately counterproductive. Why? And here's where I extend our analysis. Because God is immaterial. Because it is very easy for them to use a physical manifestation of God, i.e. miracles, to allow the public to cling on to these beliefs, saying that God can do this for you if you choose to believe in this religion. But this sort of rhetoric is ultimately counterproductive because it means that people always have to see a physical manifestation of God before they truly believe that God exists. No, thank you. But then they said, oh, but these miracles exist, and and then these miracles are true. Here's what we say. We never impose a value judgment on what religion is or whether or not these miracles will happen. But the problem is this: there's mutual exclusivity insofar as religionists and pastors choose to foreground miracles as a means and as a rhetoric to capture the attention, and therefore giving not enough emphasis on other parts of religion, an argument I'll be forwarding later. So given this understanding, how does this affect the person on the ground, right? We have to recognize that different people have different motivations for joining our religion. But the problem is this: at a point where the membership is hinged on a miracle that by definition hardly ever happens, there are two problems. One of two problems. One, this causes them to feel extremely guilty because the rhetoric that miracles are not happening because you don't believe in God strongly enough causes them to feel guilty and shameful about their personal beliefs. Or, secondly, this causes them disappointment because at the point where I choose to believe in a religion, I choose to alter my fundamental beliefs for someone, but it doesn't materialize, this only causes disappointment. They said, but miracles happen, guys. We cannot say that miracles don't happen. So this must affirm their beliefs because if miracles happen, this will affirm their beliefs. We argue that only one of these two scenarios will occur. Either one, miracles by definition are hard to occur or hardly occur, therefore they have to wait even longer. Or two, it is very easy for pastors to attribute cause and effect of a particular scenario or particular instance to God, and thereby saying that this is a miracle. What is the harm of this? It causes individuals to lose the freedom of choice, to lose the freedom to truly believe in the religion, because now any particular instance can be used by a pastor to materialize and to attribute the existence of God. So at best, you cause them to not retain membership, or at worst, religious communities shut them out altogether and there's no opt-out clause, and this only causes further backlash. What do we want on our side of the house? We want people to enter religion with realistic expectations, about what religion is. We don't want the rhetoric that religion or that God is a miracle worker. Rather, we want religion to be what it is, to be something about faith, something about waiting and years of membership and years of believing in God. And this is why, so thank you, by not placing an undue emphasis on miracles, we truly allow informed choice. And this following reply also rebuts the second speaker argument, right? Because they said that this was about consent. Like, obviously people consent very easily, especially since pastors can very easily attribute something as a miracle when it might not be. Leading me very nicely to my second question. Whether their side of the house better allows for the recruitment of membership. And here's what, before I move on, yes.
Considering you already have things like indoctrination since childhood, school teachers, adoption agencies, and preaching to the indigenous cultures, how are these churches already upholding the idea of informed choice on your side?
I don't get that because, I mean, if on one hand, these people are indoctrinating their children to believe in a religion, that from young, the rhetoric that you believe in God because miracles happen is ingrained in the mindset, then we don't see how this is any freedom of choice. More importantly, we have to understand society's frame of mind. We have to understand that in the status quo, we are affected by, for instance, the Enlightenment era or this scientific method of cause and effect. It is not particularly persuasive to the most skeptical of people that something happened 40,000 years ago to Jonas and the whale can get spit out is something that's particularly persuasive. Especially, one, because this is the frame of mind, and two, because these are fundamental beliefs people are skeptical about. Because these are fundamental beliefs which they have to consider and ponder over before truly believing in these religions. But that's why to the average reasonable person, we don't think that this is something that is particularly persuasive. They say, oh, religion fills in the gap of logic. Like, here's the problem, right? If it is hard for logicians and hard for the average reasonable person to not understand why love happens, it does not mean immediately that they be inclined towards another explanation. Just because something is not the case doesn't, mean that the other explanation is true. And this is the sort of criticism which Richard Dawkins has used against religion. Because the trust of religion, as he says, is that science cannot prove something, but as he says, this does not mean that religion can prove this. What does this mean? This opens up religion to criticism from logicians, because what is logically appealing is usually what happens and what is more persuasive, no thank you, within the status quo. Because with this frame of mind, it is extremely hard for people to believe in something that is a miracle. More importantly, and here's what they never rebutted, we argue that this causes them to over-exaggerate miracles. For the very simple reason that now, knowing that these are the weakest points in individuals, and knowing that these miracles are what causes or might cause individuals to be swayed over to the other side of the house, this causes them to manipulate these weak points by commonly throwing out rhetoric about how does it help your health, how does it help your money, especially since these are things that people cling on very easily to, or maybe the more greedy ones, right? So ultimately what happens is that if they want to say that people only enter these religions because miracles are relatable to them, then it's the precise logic we're trying to explain. We're trying to demonstrate that what these religions do is that they use specific miracles in particular areas, for instance, health, for instance, money, to win over the hearts of these people. But this is pernicious insofar as this harms the freedom of choice, an argument and the core argument of our side of the house. What have I shown you today? Firstly, it may be true that this is the incentive of religionists, but this is ultimately counterproductive because it causes membership to be hinged upon miracles, and it can only wait for miracles. More importantly, this will already cause one of two scenarios: either to be too guilty to believe in religion, or to cause disappointment, and will be shut out by religious communities altogether. For these reasons, this motion must stand.
This House thanks Gabriel, and now for the last constructive round speech of this year's ASDC, Deborah.
Fix mic? Is this okay? Cool. It was sad that the whip tried to reframe the debate and tell you that the most important part of this debate is that people have a choice. When Eliza already PY'd to you that the state never takes into account necessarily free choice when it comes to things like religion. That's why we allow indoctrination from young. That's why we allow people to proselytize even to indigenous tribes that may not even have access to any other forms of religion. Why does the state allow this? Because we understand that any religion on its own has a benefit for people. Whatever it is that they teach, usually it's a collective morality. It's something that benefits people. It's something that makes people want to be better on their own. Considering all of this, we think that a large chunk of the speech on why there's no choice at all is rendered irrelevant. There's basically one issue in this debate today. How do you improve the spreading of religion and religion in itself? Because they basically told us four things. First, that it undermines the new believers' belief, acceptance, and that people will leave because they don't know enough. We don't think that's true, right? Because it's an assumption that miracles will not happen and somehow people will be disappointed and leave. We think that miracles are very likely to happen. That's why there's so much talk about it. That's why so many pastors preach about it, right? But even if these miracles do not happen, we think that the benefit on our side is that there's a curiosity that is built on people who are on the fence, or even the skeptics that they wanted to talk about. Because even if they never experience that kind of miracle, they still want to know, why did this miracle happen? And that's something that's beneficial for religion, right? When people want to know more, and religion is forced to rationalize the kinds of things that they do and teach them, the kinds of beliefs that they have. But what was the second? But more than that, we think that the priority of religion is not simply to gain numbers, right? It's to gain numbers sustainably. That's why they have an incentive not to simply bring them to church and leave them at the side, making them think that miracles are the only tenet of religion. That's something that everyone built up heavily upon. Because considering that religion wants people to come and believe their things, clearly they're going to want to teach them about the other things that they believe in too, right? Not simply just that miracles are God, but that miracles are an effect of our God, and our God does these particular things. But what's the second thing that they try to tell us? They told us that there was a competition of religion and that you promote exaggeration, right? A bit of a rehash that happened in DPM. We don't think that it's likely that they'll be exaggerating anyway, right? Because the competition that they talk about already exists. It's more likely that they have no incentive to exaggerate because firstly, it's not relatable to the people who they want to tell this to, but more than that, it would then be untrue, right? And these religions generally teach people not to lie. And it's worse if they are found out to have been lying, because then there's even more backlash. They are rendered even more invalid in society. That's why they wouldn't simply exaggerate, right? But what's the third idea that came to them, that came up? They told us that there was coercion that happened and somehow people wouldn't be able to choose. Here are 3 pillars of what a rational choice is. First, you're able to opt out. We think it's very easy for people to opt out of religion. They can choose to be in a religion, to be not in a religion, make up their own religion, even if they wanted. Second, there needs to be a plethora of choices, which they do have, right? And thirdly, they need to be informed of the decisions that they make. We think that considering there's already so many counter-narratives to religion, there's already so many people, atheists or scientists, who say religion is untrue and here's why. This is exactly why we need this kind of counter-narrative. Things like miracles, tangible proofs of this religion to be able to successfully counter this. Because how long can a religion stand if they don't have anything tangible to back them up? But what's the fourth idea that they gave to us? They talked to us about how there's skepticism that happens, and even if you had miracles, you never bring anyone to church. But look, Eliza told you specifically from the beginning that this debate is about those who are, on the fence, who we can change and who we need to change. But even so, we think that the benefit on our side is at least a kind of curiosity that happens there. At least we can change those. At least we can change them. Right? At least now we are highlighting that the inability to understand these certain things is what's going to make them want to find out more. But even if we never change them, they will never change in the first place, because from the PM himself, they said, who wants to listen to the Bible? Who wants to listen to a preacher anyway? At least in our side, we make people want to learn, even if they don't stay. At least we've made a bigger choice. At least we've made a bigger try. Yes.
It is about choosing between either my way of life and my belief, or on your side, scientifically impossible miracles. We argue that your side turns people away insofar as you don't promote religion as something that I believe in as my way of life.
If they don't believe in it intrinsically, they wouldn't subscribe to it. This is about people who would want to anyway. But even if you want to talk about scientific proof, there's a lot of things that people accept, right? Things like the placebo effect. You can't explain the things that your body does, but you still accept it, right? You say science explains it. Considering that, therefore, scientific explanation is not always the core of every single belief, let's take a look at what we talked to you about. Because why are miracles so necessary? It's for people to make that conceptualization of what God is, because that's what religion is. It's not about this whole body of a church. It's about me and God. It's about the way that I can commune with God. And if the way that miracles does it is kickstart that relationship, or even strengthen the kind of relationship that people have when they see that they were in a car accident and they still managed to make it out alive. This is the kind of thing that strengthens these relationships with God, and that's what makes it so necessary. It allows them to further, in fact, their understanding of God, to create that understanding, to make them want to look even more into what God is, especially those people, right, who are, let's say, on the fence or about to leave their religion. When they find these kinds of things that can back them up, that's something that is good, right, because it's like a physical manifestation of God that improves the kind of intimacy that they can have with Him. But more than that, we think the government side never really gave to us any kind of benefit, right? Because even though they conceded, that not many people want to listen to religion, even if they want to stick to their whole idea of pure doctrine, let's tell everybody everything about the Bible before we ask them whether they want to be Christians, they're still not giving us any benefit, even though they agreed that what we all want is to be able to spread religion better. We already told you why there's incentive to spread this religion better. We don't think that we've heard any real response to that. Because more than that, we told you that what Evan talked to you about was that you need to maximize the relatability and the sustainability of these different religions, right? And the reason why people need miracles is because they are the answer to ambiguous questions that we've had for centuries, or even just, for our whole lives, right? Considering this, then, we think that it's more likely that we're able to answer the questions that people have through divine means, right? Because this is the only thing that can really explain it. Because let's compare what happens here. is it more likely that religion will simply talk about the miracles and not follow up on the religious followers and leave them to, let's say, leave the faith once they realize that a miracle isn't going to happen? Or is it more likely in our side that they want to make the faith in those people sustainable, that they want to make sure that these people understand the other tenets of religion and not simply think, this God is about miracles, but rather that this God works miracles because of the different things that He is. At the end of the day, we are the only side that brought you a benefit. They never did. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. For the reply speech from side opposition, may we have Evan Wong. Hello. Can you guys please not disturb the debater? Thank you.
Let's follow the two clashes Government Whip provided to you in his own speech and tell you how he didn't fulfill those two clashes and those issues under his own side in today's debate. But firstly, let's tackle this weird POI coming in Deborah's speech from their side about the idea that firstly it's either a choice between you harm your own conception of God, your own relationship with God, or you choose to believe in the miracle. We think in the very first place, if you were to opt into the religion based on the emphasis of miracles, you believe that you relate to God based on the miracles themselves. So we don't understand why it harms your own conception or your own relatability to God if your own relatability to God was based on the emphasis of miracles to begin with. So if it wasn't, then you wouldn't have opted in the first place. We don't think that's the main issue in today's clash. But let's go into the two issues which he himself said. Firstly, about recruitment, and secondly, why people would want to stay in the religion. About recruitment, firstly, they said, on their side, they said, when recruitment happens on the basis of miracles, three things happen. Number one, individuals don't get informed choice. Number two, miracles, which are under their side, not the main tenet, undermine the other core tenets of religion. And thirdly, harms an individual relationship with God, which I don't really understand under their side, right? Look how we tackled those ideas, right? Firstly, we told you that it was an informed choice, right? Because people firstly could opt out at any point of time, but secondly, encounter various counter-narratives towards the narratives proposed by the religion itself, through the media, to atheists or skeptics, which they wanted to provide as well under their case, right? So people can opt out and opt in based on informed choice in the very first place. But even if it was an informed choice, religion always proselytizes based on certain coercive aspects to begin with. Like what Eliza and Deborah consistently pointed out to you, they proselytize through soup kitchens, they proselytize through indoctrination to indigenous communities, they proselytize through indoctrination through families since young, right? I think these are things that happen which have certain coercive aspects, but they are okay with it, right? So you don't see why informed choice is a main clash in today's debate. Secondly, miracles are not the main tenet and undermines other core tenets of religion. We told you that religion, there's no such thing as core tenets or not core tenets. It's all about relatability and how you relate to the religion and how you relate to God to the certain things proposed by the religious organizations to begin with. We told you from the very get-go, if miracles weren't relatable to you to begin with, you wouldn't have opted in. Because miracles were relatable to you, you therefore opted in, you therefore made it a core tenet of your own belief towards God. I think that's crucial to allow to continue to exist in today's society, where individuals who do believe miracles do exist and miracles do happen, to allow to continue to spread that belief to other individuals as well. We think that's something that they undermine under their side, because there's no such thing as a core tenet or not core tenet. Lastly, on this idea that you harm individual relationship with God, we don't think this is true. We think it maximizes the relatability with God. Something in my speech that was left untouched by their side, right? When you allow emphasis on miracles, but you allow miracles to fill in the logic gaps that happen under status quo today, then you allow them to have a better relationship and understanding with God when God provides the answers to the questions that exist in today's world, when they can fulfill their inquisitive and curious nature under many circumstances in this world. So we think that recruitment happens better on the outside and it's undermined under their side when the first speaker already admitted that the only way they're going to check people with boring long sermons by the pastor under their side. Let's tackle the other main harm which they propose, right? Why do people stay in religion? They say that you fall out of religion, right? Look, that's firstly a main assumption on their side, that miracles will not happen. Because under our side, we tell you that miracles could potentially happen, and you must allow individuals to continue to believe that miracles could happen. But let's tackle the main clash of this case, right? What if miracles do not happen? Then the whip came out for you, there's disappointment, guilt, and shame, and things like that, right? Look, if miracles do not happen, but you entered religion based on the emphasis of miracles, this is why you allow miracles to fill in the curiosity to begin with. This means that individuals are curious in nature, something I pointed out in my speech, and you allow religion to build on the curious nature of these things, right? That's why people still want to stay in religion, even though miracles don't happen, right? People say that, hey, there's so many other things within religion which fills answers which today's world do not provide. These are answers which I want to find, and religion is the only one which provides the answer to me. That's why people still have incentive to remain. But furthermore, miracles don't only need to happen towards yourself, but it could happen to other people, and that's a tangible proof that miracles still can happen, and you see it by yourself. Miracles do happen, and you continue to believe that miracles, although they don't happen to yourself, that miracles do exist, and therefore you should stay in church, because that's the core tenet of your belief. You can still pray for miracles, you can still pray for things to happen to other people. We think that religion is better served on the outside. We have better recruitment, people will still stay in religion on the outside. We fulfill the two clashes which they didn't fulfill.
Thanks, Evan. For the last speech of this year's ASDC, may we have Timothy on the floor.
You see, we cannot let opposition get away with mischaracterizing this entire debate, because this debate was about specific religions which exist and which are trying to reach out to more people, not just any religion which is just based solely on miracles. This debate was not about banning these religions, but precisely because of the huge ambiguity that exists, but about the harms that are accrued when all these religions ultimately exaggerate whatever miracles that are happening, or try to focus and foreground on these miracles. We never said that, we never stood for any other form of indoctrination as their side did, and their side tried to extend the principle. We on our side stood very clearly for the freedom of choice. And within this context, let us examine the different people who approach and who are approached by these preachers, right? So first of all, we talked about the scientific and inquisitive person who is increasingly prevalent in today's world, right? Because we all have inquisitive mind, etc. And just as we told you that foregrounding miracles will cause people to reject this religion out of hand, even before you talk about the other aspects of it, because people don't even consider that these miracles are scientifically possible to begin with, right? This is so harmful on their side when they refuse to engage with it, because any form of hope that they want to talk about, any form of choice that they want to talk about, is therefore non-existent on their side of the house. None of the benefits that they talk about accrue in the first place. The entire process is broken in the very first thing. Then let's move on to the next step in the process, right? About people who want miracles for themselves. Here's where we told you that these people, say I'm sick and I want to be cured, right? I want a miracle from God. I'm not making an informed choice at the point where you tell me that these miracles are going to exist. This is a God of miracles. And in fact, once you're going, you're leading a terrible life, because your pastor tells you maybe your faith is not strong enough, maybe you are guilty, maybe you are sinful, right? And there's a huge stigma that is associated with them when you're in the church. This is a terrible life, a terrible choice that we don't want these people to opt in for. Then they brought to us the next entire idea, the next step, people who just believe in miracles in general, right? But we have already taken the 2 points, so this is actually in fact above and beyond that. So here's where we tell you that religion is really so much more. Religion is about faith, etc. All these are things which they consider, right? Like going to church, all the religious practice requirements. These are things which they concede. And at the point where they concede this, they need to show us why a person who believes that religion is about miracles should ultimately opt into a religion which foregrounds miracles, while at the same time telling you that you're opting in for all these other requirements as well. Something that their side has fundamentally failed to prove in this entire debate. Even for those people who want miracles and who opt into religions who ultimately go for miracles, right? The problem with foregrounding miracles in proselytism is that ultimately this approach opens up religious beliefs to their entire scientific criticism, the entire notion propounded by Richard Dawkins, where even if science can't prove this, God cannot prove this either. Something we clearly responded to, not dealt with by their side of the house. At the end of the day, why then is their approach so important at the end of the day, right? Because it gives them attention, because it's relatable, it captures people's attention. Here we really very clearly told you that more isn't better, right? And therefore it is about the quality, it's about the nature of what people are believing in. Clearly, if attention gets more believers and more people to garner the attention of more people. That's not in and of itself a good, because our point then falls and they concede that more isn't better. And finally, we also told you that this entire idea of sustainability is so harmful and pernicious, especially on our side of the house, right? Because in order to keep these people in, you foreground miracles, in order to get them to the church in the first place. And once they're in the church, you constantly rationalize the entire thing to them. You utilize the ambiguity, and in the sermons, you constantly rationalize whatever's happening, and that is when there's ultimately no informed choice, there's ultimately no opt-out at the end of the day. Members of this house, we think that people do not even have a choice to begin with. We think that people do not have a choice to go for the religion that they want to. There's no religious freedom on their side of the house. We clearly take today's debate.
Could we give way for the adjudicators to leave the room first? The buses to Duchess Place will leave at 7 p.m. sharp. If you're late, you'll have to take a taxi.